So this is different. I have something that's not actually old, but new. So my boss texted me the other day and he's like, hey, I got this new work laptop. Wonder if you want to review it on your YouTube channel. And I was like, well, if it's a new laptop, it doesn't really match the theme of my channel really. And he's like, this. So I was like, you know what? Why not? Let's do it. So I have a few days with this laptop to screw around with it. This is the Lenovo Legion S7. And I'm gonna do a full review of it, do some benchmarks, do the battery test, do the whole spiel with it. And you can check below. I will have some chapters so you can skip ahead to the good stuff that you want to see. But otherwise, this video starts now. Well, almost now, because I need to make a small configuration change to this laptop since it's my boss's. So just give me a second here. There, perfect. So this is the Lenovo Legion Slim 7i Gen 8. My sources say this configuration costs $2,158 and it comes with the following: a Intel Core i9-13900H, an NVIDIA RTX 4070, 32 gigabytes of DDR5, 5200 megahertz RAM, a 240 Hz 16-inch IPS HDR display with a resolution of 2560 by 1600, a 1TB Gen 4 NVMe TLC SSD, and Windows 11 Pro OS. The starter configurations of this unit that come with Windows Home and 16 gigabytes of RAM started around $1,690. So the specs are pretty nice for the price, and I feel it's competitive for what's inside of it. Now, if specs like a GPU and CPU were all that mattered for a laptop, I'm sure you could get similar specs for less money. However, I can't stress enough that it is equally important to get a laptop that feels good to use as well. A laptop with a bad keyboard, touchpad, poor I/O, or bad battery life can ruin the experience of using the device. I'm happy to say though that this device does not suffer from any of these problems. The screen on this thing is gorgeous. Granted, my point of reference is an old Dell 1440p 144Hz TN panel, but man, modern displays have come a long way in the past couple of years. I was playing some Rainbow Six Siege at about 260 FPS to take advantage of the 240 Hz refresh rate, and it was so smooth and clear. The camera really can't capture just how nice it looks. Moving on to the real important bits, we have the keyboard and the touchpad. The touchpad is fairly large, works as expected, and uses familiar gesture controls. And I can't really say anything bad about it. It is slightly offset to the left for ergonomics, I assume. I'm not sure if that's a problem if you're a lefty or something, but you are informed, I guess. The keyboard uses chiclet style keys that seem to be all the rage these days to keep laptops slim and thin. To me, these feel great for typing as well as gaming, and I'm someone who's kind of picky about keyboards. The keys have a nice tactile bump and require enough actuation force to keep you from fat fingering the wrong keys without noticing. The function keys for changing the backlights and profiles also seem pretty intuitive. I will say that Lenovo is missing out on a golden opportunity here though, to include their signature nipple pointer on this device. Think about it. Their business laptops have nipples. Some of their Chromebooks have nipples. And if we look at the demographic of the average gamer, it's scientifically proven that many of them like or have nipples. So I would say the time of the gaming nipple is upon us. Make it happen, Lenovo. Moving on to the I/O, it is fairly generous for a modern laptop. On the back, you have 3 USB 3 10 gig ports, a HDMI, and Lenovo's rectangular power port thing for the included 230 watt AC adapter. The I/O labels near the back are also backlit on the top of the laptop, so you can see where each port is located without fumbling around too much. On the left side, we have a 3.5mm headphone jack and 2 USB-C ports. One of the ports is labeled for Thunderbolt, and another is labeled for USB power delivery, so using a USB-C or Thunderbolt dock should be no problem. If I had to nitpick about the I/O here, I would say that it would be nice to have a USB-A port on the side of the unit. Having them all in the back gets a bit annoying if you need to plug in a USB drive or something. The right side of the laptop does include a full-size SD card slot though, so they are forgiven. There's also a small webcam kill switch if you like using your laptop naked. Speaking of cameras, unlike my current laptop, the ASUS Zephyrus G14, this laptop actually has a webcam, and it sounds and looks like this. Here's a sample of the webcam audio and video quality, so there you go. I will say the microphone has some weird software sound suppression things going on. I played some guitar with it and it literally removed almost all the sound. This might be a good thing for some, but I'm not sure if you can turn it off, so that's kind of annoying. Also annoying, McAfee comes pre-installed. Why do tech companies keep doing this? Get rid of McAfee. So up next is the battery. I tested the battery life by playing a 4K video on loop with the speakers set to 50% and the screen at about 60% brightness. The battery lasted 4 hours and 10 minutes before powering off. Without doing any further testing, I would say if you were just doing simple office tasks, you could probably double this battery life and get about 6 to 8 hours, depending on your screen brightness. Testing the speakers, I did a comparison with my Zephyrus G14, and here's what it sounds like on my Tascam recorder. Really great speakers on both of these units. I would say the Lenovo is louder and feels a bit more spatial, but the G14 sounds a bit more clear, especially with the volume cranked. As far as upgradability, the back panel can easily be removed with 8 screws and will reveal the cooling system and various heat pipes. Next to the battery, you will find an M.2 slot, which is occupied with the 1TB SSD, and one RAM slot which is covered by a metal shield. Unfortunately, half the system memory, 16 gigabytes in this case, is soldered on board, so upgradability is limited to what you can fit into this one RAM slot. Now onto the gaming benchmarks, which is probably what most people do with a gaming laptop such as this. For your reference, all tests were done using the native 2560 by 1600 resolution on the built-in display, since I figured that's the display you're going to be using most of the time. So the first game up here is Rainbow Six Siege. Using the Ultra preset with 100% resolution scaling gave us an average FPS of 225 with lows of 182 and a max FPS of 276. The same settings with DLSS in performance mode gave us an average FPS of 261 with lows of 221 and a max FPS of 319. Overall, since most players use low settings to gain a competitive advantage in esports titles like this, I think either with DLSS or lower settings, you won't have any issues taking advantage of the 240Hz display in this game. The next game I tested was Shadow of the Tomb Raider, and although this game is a few years old now, it's still pretty demanding with the settings pushed up. Using the highest preset, this machine averaged 76 FPS, a minimum FPS of 62, with a max FPS going as high as 114. The same settings using balanced DLSS gave us a 39% performance increase with an average FPS of 106, a minimum FPS of 80, and a max frame rate of 175. Trying out the ray trace shadows and pushing it to ultra will ultimately tank your FPS. However, it's still very playable with a 49 FPS average and lows of 38 FPS. If you enable DLSS balanced with ray tracing, it will up your average to 74 FPS with a minimum of 59. Yeehaw! Red Dead Redemption 2 is next, and I'm running this one in Vulkan mode. Moving the preset slider all the way to the right will give you an FPS average of 55 with a 15 FPS minimum and a max FPS of 119. Using balanced DLSS again to keep things more reasonable will give you an average of 67 FPS with a minimum of 23 and a max of 134. Obviously, Red Dead Redemption 2 is a pretty demanding game, and a middling preset would probably be the way to go for smooth gameplay if you don't want to use DLSS. Now let's talk about Horizon Zero Dawn. I love this game, and I really feel like Sony has done a great job porting it to Windows. It runs pretty well, even on mid-range cards. Using the ultimate preset on this machine, we get an average FPS of 71 with a 61 FPS 1% low, and a max FPS of 137. Using the balanced DLSS scaling method gives us a nicer 92 FPS average and a higher 1% low of 78. The max FPS was 178 on this run. If you wanted higher FPS, a more aggressive DLSS setting or reducing the quality to high will boost the FPS by quite a bit. Either way, you'll be way past 60 FPS for this title on any setting easily. What about temperatures and workstation use? The i9 in this machine claims to be able to boost P-cores up to 5.4 GHz. I never really saw it go that high, and consecutive runs of multi-core Cinebench seem to make it throttle pretty quickly. The first run of Cinebench gave us a score of 17,929. After that, the scores get incrementally lower with each run, and it almost makes me wonder if the i9 is really able to be tamed by this cooling system without throttling in all but the most bursty workloads. After around 10 minutes of Furmark and Prime 95, the GPU hit a max of 81 degrees Celsius, and the CPU averaged 92 degrees Celsius, sometimes spiking up to 98. This is all within spec, and these are extreme temps you won't get on most normal workloads. However, sustained workloads like video renders will make the CPU throttle rather quickly, as the Cinebench test shows. In actual gaming workloads, the CPU seems to sit at around 85 degrees, and the GPU hits around 70 at maximum. Idle temps for the CPU are around 50 degrees, and the GPU stays at an icy 45 degrees Celsius. The fans are pretty darn loud when you're playing games, but such is the life of a laptop gamer. In conclusion though, I would say this is a pretty good laptop, especially at the starting price if you're in the market for a larger laptop like this. I feel like the screen is a major selling point on this model. My current laptop is a 14-inch, and really it's too small for most extended gaming sessions. If I had this though, I could see using it all the time without buying an external display. Alas though, it needs to go back to the boss man, and this channel will go back to being a retro tech one. But yeah, anyway, if you like this video, maybe you'll like my others. They're about DOS games and older tech, so give me a sub if you're into that. If you're not, well, that's fine too. Maybe like this video if it was helpful to you.